So, occasionally I use Illustrator to actually lay out a brochure. Most of the time, anytime I use type in Illustrator, it's as part of a bigger piece of art or whatever. But it's got tools that'll allow you to do page layout with type and create style sheets and all. They're not very robust, nothing like InDesign gives you. So it's really not a replacement for that. But I do find that Illustrator a lot of times can be good for simple things like a direct mail postcard, something that's just two sides, because a lot of the elements need to come out of Illustrator anyway. So, and my general rule of thumb is if it's got more than 2 pages, it's got to go to InDesign. But if I think about that for a moment, though, I guess a lot of times I'll do social media graphics in Illustrator, and in those cases, I do need to have consistent type between all of them and whatnot, so I'm kind of doing page layout, but I'm doing them at different sizes, and it's kind of convenient in Illustrator. So, you know, the type tools will give us the ability to do that. So, I'm just going to create a new document real fast. And in my Essentials Classic workspace, here's that type tool. And I'm just going to, actually, I'm going to change this menu. I want to look at the advanced menu here. So if I go to my window menu, down to, where's my toolbars there? Advanced, that'll give me the double one. Then if I click on the type tool, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of additional options there. I'm just going to click on the strip out to the side to tear that off so that I can see all of my different options. So I'll start with the very first one, which is the general type tool. Most of these I'm going to gloss over. 2 of them I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. So the first one is our general type tool. 2 different ways we can use the type tool. We can either click and use it as what's referred to as point type, or we can click and drag and create a text area. So if I want to select my type tool, click and drag an area out, it'll fill it with Greek text by default. But that'll create a text area, just like we get in InDesign for the most part. Rather than that though, I'm just going to hold down my Command key and click out here to deselect that. If I just click, it'll just put a single line of type. If I go to outline mode, we'll see the difference here is that my point type is just, there's a little point right there and it just all sits on this line out to the side. But with my type area, it's 4 points and lines around it. So I can create blocks of type this way. Or I can do just, like I said, what's referred to as point type. And I'll kind of show, there's reasons for both of them. So, anyway. So those are 2 different ways of using this particular tool. With the type area tool, like I just drew up here, if I grab my direct select tool and click on one of the points, I can reshape that tool or that box. And get some kind of interesting shapes with it. My type tool, on the other hand, though, is just a few words of type. And I can, why I don't type and I copy and paste from a Word doc. I can just type out individual lines of text. So, easy enough to rescale those. You know, with my selection tool, I can scale them this way. Click and dragging, holding my shift key to make sure it's constrained. I can't, however, do that with my text area tool. It'll resize the area, but not the type inside. So those are the two basic shapes that we can put type into. So should I decide I want to, though, I can convert either one of these between area type or line or point type. So notice whenever I select this, there's this little blue dot hanging out off the right-hand side. If I click on that, or double click it, it will basically change this into point type. It's got a bounding box, but it's not the same as area type. So I can also convert that back if I need to. Double click on that white point, and now it's area type again. Can do the same thing with this one if I need to. Double click on it, it's now area type. Area type and point type. All right. So that's that, and we'll look at that a little bit more in a little bit. But the other item I want to really look at here is the third one over, type on a path. So if I create an ellipse, just grab a circle, I'm just going to draw it out here. Then I'm going to select this type on a path tool, and you'll see that it's like a type icon with a little path going through it. If I just place this right over top of my circle and click, it'll actually wrap it to the path that I put it on. And now I'm going to go over here into my properties panel. There's my type panel where I can change typefaces and whatnot. I can also, if it's easier, if you don't have that, you can go to the window menu down to type and pick the character panel, which is Command T, and that'll bring the type panel up. So from the type panel, I'll just change my point size. Click this little hamburger, show all the options. I'm going to make this type all caps. And I can wrap type to this path that way. I can do that to I can use a pen tool and do that as well. But simple way to put type on a path. So again, application for that. I mean, lots of application really, but running type along an arc. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do. That's the way we do it. So selecting this and taking a look at it, a couple of things to point out. You'll notice that, so right now, if I look at our paragraph panel, everything's flush left, which is fine. I could flush its center. But along this path, you're going to see there's going to be two lines really close to each other right here where the type is. And there's going to be a single one on the opposite side. This marks the center point of these two lines. One of these lines is the end point of this text area. The other one is the beginning point of this text area. So if I move the beginning point over here to the very top, you'll see that this center point moves because it always stays halfway between each one of these. So I'm going to actually adjust this so that I'm going to put my beginning and end at halves on this circle. And then I'm just going to center my type, and that'll put it right on the top of it. But if I move either one of these points, these lines, that's going to shift where that center is. The little boxes on it are overflow boxes. So if I've got more type on this circle than it can hold, the type is still there, but it's hidden. I can click on that little box, create another shape to have that type flow into, basically. Any questions on that before I move on? So now we're going to look, we have options for this. And I'm going to take a look at those real quick. So with this selected, if I go up to my type menu, about a third of the way down, there's type on a path. And there are options: rainbow, skew, 3D stair step, gravity, and then I've got type on a path options. So you can try each of those different ones if you want. They give you different effects of how the type's going to wrap, basically. 3D ribbon. Just some general stuff. I'm going to leave it on rainbow. And then I'm going to select my type on a path options. And here's what that dialog looks like. So I've still got the rainbow option. If I flip it, I click the flip and hit my preview button, it's going to flip it to the inside of the path. So flip will flip it between the inside and the outside of the path. Useful when you've got type at the bottom of the arc. But leave it on rainbow. Align to path is set to baseline by default, but that drop down's got some options in it as well. So I can either align it on the ascender, which is the top of the type, the descenders, which are the bottoms of, this typeface has characters that go below the baseline. Or I can center it, and that'll put it right on the middle of my path, which I find useful usually. If I do that and I flip it, what do I get? Okay. So I've got these different options. Make sure this preview checkbox is checked, and whatever you do, you'll be able to see it happen in real time. But we'll put it to the center and say OK. And then if I go back to my character menu, I can change my typeface. I like, actually, what do I like? Let's do... So if I know the name of my typeface that I'm looking for in my character panel, I can actually type in that window. So if I know I'm looking for Metropolis, or if I'm looking for Montserrat, M-O-N-T, will filter for all the faces that begin with M-O-N-T. So I'm going to do Montserrat extra bold, make it smaller, change my point size. Letting we don't need to worry about with type on a path. But maybe my tracking I do want to mess with. So I'm going to change my tracking, which is the space collectively between the letters. Change that to like 100, maybe 200, something like that. Make all sorts of fun little changes to it. So do that. On our type panel, we've got options to vertically scale and horizontally scale type. I personally hate that those are there because I don't believe you should ever really squish or stretch type. If you need an expanded typeface, pick a typeface that's just drawn that way. So, you know, Montserrat's kind of an expanded face, but if I really need a condensed one, I really don't want to condense Montserrat because it affects the way the typeface is drawn, and it's kind of ugly. So we're going to, same thing goes for extending it or expanding it. It changes the thickness of the horizontals and the verticals and isn't really a good look as far as type goes. So I always do that 100%, but if I need an expanded typeface or I need a condensed typeface, I'm going to look for maybe Helvetica New Condensed Black. So pick the right typeface for the job anytime you're selecting type. Don't scale it and that kind of thing. It's just something I don't want to see. I'm pretty sure Britt and Dave, when they teach type 1, I'm pretty sure they agree with me on that. But it's just that, you know, typefaces are drawn a specific way to look good and to read well, and when you go modify them that way, that it kind of destroys that readability. So, pick the face you want to, you know, the right typeface. You can also, if I select my type tool, I can place a cursor in between letters, and I can adjust the kerning on them as well if I want. What's the difference between tracking and kerning? Does anybody know? Or do you know? There's a subtle difference between the two, besides one having my name. So tracking is the overall space, is a collective overall spacing between the letters in a line of type. When you adjust tracking, you're adjusting the space between all of them simultaneously and together. But most of the time, there are very few typefaces that actually track up perfectly. Most of the time, you actually need to go in and make adjustments to the individual letter spacing for consistency and whatnot. Adjustments to the individual spacing is referred to as kerning. So that's the difference between the two. Tracking is overall space between all the characters collectively, the average. So I'll change the tracking to +10 to -10 or whatever. It applies to all the characters. But if I do kerning, you know, like there's a little bit of a, if I zoom in on this, I think there's a little bit extra, because of the way the characters are drawn, there's a little extra space between the Y and the P that doesn't really exist between the T and the Y. I can place my cursor there, hold down my Option key, and use my arrow keys to fine-tune the spacing on that stuff. And just kind of go around and hit the ones I need. I somehow put an extra space in there. But Option key and use your right and left arrows to adjust that. Yeah, so that's type on a path. We can do some kind of fun things with that. If I had numbers on a clock, I might use this differently. Or say, well, I got 1 through 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Crank my tracking on that way up to 600 or something. But if I want them to all be readable, right readable, I would go to my type menu type on a path, change it to stair step, I think. Yeah, stair step will change the orientation of it. So type on a path, a lot of different uses. I kind of foresee, I mean, some of you might actually want to use that on your image translations when you integrate your type. I can see, I can see that, so. The other ones are, this is area type. I mean, I can select, I don't have to actually draw shapes out or draw out with the type tool to put type in something. I could take an ellipse, create a long, tall one, grab my area type tool, click on the path, and fill an odd shape with type as well. If I want more Greek text, if I'm just doing a layout or sort of a mock-up, place my cursor right at the very end of that, go to my type menu, and go down to fill with placeholder text. We'll actually fill it up with lorem ipsum Greek text, basically. I could drop my point size on that some more. Whoops. Got to have it selected to do that. Type, and fill with placeholder text. So, do that. I can go to my paragraph panel where all my alignment types are. And create a shape that way. I need to go back and fix all my rivers and stuff that exist between my type, but I can fill a shape that way as well. So any shape that I can draw, I can fill with type, with the area type tool. Type on a path, vertical type in an area, vertical type on a path. Gets kind of nuts. Touch type is kind of interesting. So pull this off to the side. Just going to grab a type tool and I'm going to type my name. I'm going to enlarge it a lot. Should reduce it just a little bit. All right, so I got my name. If I go to my touch type tool, I can click on individual characters and change them. Rotate it. Go click on this one. Rotate it. Kind of do some funky things with them. It does mess up the kerning, but I can fix that too. Click on it and drag it. I can drag it below the baseline. Touch type is an interesting kind of thing. And the last one, I'll touch on it and just, each of the corners do something slightly different, so you got to kind of pay attention to what you got. But it allows you to kind of dynamically mess with your type. So I've done that. I could, now the one thing it won't let me do, it respects the boundary boxes when you do this. But if I go back to my type tool, grab it, click between them, characters, hold down my option key, I can go ahead and close up spaces between them. And maybe I'll grab the touch type again because maybe I might want to see the S actually growing out of the other S. I don't know, something like that. So, an interesting kind of tool. Allows you to manually do those things. It's kind of nice because it's still all editable. I mean, if I needed to change, you know, I can still retype if I needed to change it to, it erases what I had before, but if I needed it to be Rust instead of Russ, I can make that change. Otherwise, the only way to do this is to convert all your type to paths, ungroup them, and then make edits to them. So, it's kind of worth playing around with the touch type tool. Just gives you some flexibility that you don't normally get. Could just use it to move them around for that matter. So that's a touch type tool. Any questions on any of that so far? Stop it right now and ask. Okay. So, what time is it? 3:11. All right. What else is good to make sure you know? All right. So if I'm just going to type initials, R-A-K, and I'm going to change the typeface to, from Montserrat, I'm going to change it to Droid Serif, I suppose. Or no, let's do ITC Galliard Pro Roman. I like that typeface. Nice Roman typeface, or serif typeface. So without doing too much typography, jargon, and that kind of stuff, sans serif typefaces are the typefaces that don't have the little feet on them. So the R has these feet, the A, the K have these feet on the ascenders and descenders. That makes them a serif typeface. So serif, Greek for feet. Sans serif means no feet. So a typeface like Montserrat, Helvetica, Arial, all of those are sans serif typefaces. But, so I've set this type here. I want to actually use this as art. I want to be able to do something else with it. So right now it's live type, meaning that if I click in it, I can type and change the text. But I want to create sort of a bit of a monogram out of this, I think. So I need it to be artwork in order to do that. So I've typed this out. I'm going to go up to my type menu, and about midway down, Command-Shift-O is create outlines. And what that'll do is whenever I do that, it'll convert it to paths. So it becomes artwork. I can no longer, once I've converted it to outlines, I can no longer change the text in any way. Yeah. So, and you got some text you typed out. With that selected, it's under the type menu, create outlines. It's about a little over halfway down. Mm-hmm. So this is a pretty nicely drawn face. It's got few points in it. It's pretty usable. So when you convert type to paths like this, or outline type, it groups all of the characters together. If we take a look on our layer menu, you'll see that that's what's selected, and it's a group of objects. But they're all compound paths. So I'm going to just go ahead and select that, go to my object menu, and I'm going to ungroup them so that they're individual characters that I can work with. So I'm going to grab the J, pull it out. And I can edit this text just like I edit anything else. So it's got points. I could decide that I want the bottom of the J to look like that. Something's a little bit different. Actually, for doing that, it's kind of ugly. So let's do this. Maybe it's a little more like that. Maybe this one So anyway, it's just paths. I can start editing it as much as I want, make changes to it. When I do logo types, I'm almost always doing this. I don't ever it's a personal thing. I don't like actually designing logo types for people that somebody can just, if you know the typeface, you can plunk down a line of type out the name and have it. So I usually modify stuff to some degree, but this is where the item in your grading rubric is all type converted to outlines, and all type and strokes converted to outlines. This is another one of those items. So, you'll have assignments where you've got to do a clock. Say with numbers on a clock, you'll create those numbers, but you got to convert them to outlines before you're done. So we don't want to leave live type in, generally speaking. So we can do that and edit all of those typefaces. I could also, like with this J, if I grab my pencil tool over here, where'd it go? There. I'm going to grab my pencil tool, select the J, and I'm just going to come as close to these points as I can, and I'm not very good with drawing with a mouse, but if I do something like this, it'll actually join it to the character. That's horrible. Hold on. If I do it right, let's undo that. Let's undo that. Let's double click on our pencil. Oh, that's why. We want it to be smooth. We do not want it to do what I do. All right. So now I can kind of click right there, come over. And that'll kind of join that up. Kind of a crappy shape. Actually, it's not very good. But we can then go in and smooth things out. We can but anyway, you kind of get the idea. Smoothing tool there. A little better than it was when I started. Anyway, we can kind of edit our type that way. So, the last thing with type is that if we go into our window menu down here to type, we have not only our character panel and our paragraph panel, but we've also got paragraph and character styles. So let's look at, I'll bring up the character styles panel. And right by default it's empty. But if I want to type my name, let's delete that. Try it again. And say I've got a whole bunch of bits of type that all need to be the same. Whether I'm doing a small brochure or whatever, it's kind of irrelevant. But when I set this type, and I set the font that I like, the point size, those kinds of things. If I want to make sure that I don't have to reset all those things again the next time I type out some type, with this selected, if I go to my character styles panel, I can, as long as that's selected, I can click the plus sign in the bottom of it, and it'll add a character style. Double click on that. I want to change it to name style. I don't give it some name, miscellaneous name. And by default, Illustrator will remember the last set of settings I used. But let's say that this one ended up being smaller for some reason. I can go back, I can select that, go back over here to the style that I created, and double click on it, and it'll reapply all those styles to that type. So that's on a character basis. Usually character styles are used for emphasis kinds of things. It only affects the characters that you have selected. So I had all the characters selected in these lines, but if I wanted to do, so if I wanted to do and make this all, say I make this all Shutter Gothic slab for whatever reason. If I just select the E and the R and I apply that name style to it, it'll only apply it to the characters I have selected. So it's it only works on the words and characters you have selected. Whereas paragraph styles, on the other hand, if I've got, I'm just going to draw out a block of text. Oof. I don't want that applied to it, so I'll select that, change that back to normal. I'll just flush that left. Type, let's fill it with placeholder text. Lorem ipsum dolor will be my headline. What paragraph styles allow us to do is, if I select that type and I want to make it I'll use Boucherie block and make it 24 points, and then I'll select all of this text and I want to make that something a little nicer. Make it Galliard, I guess. And 9 points. So a headline style. So I've created a headline and some body copy. So with this headline style, I can select that, or actually I can just select some of it, go to my paragraph styles panel, click that plus sign, and it'll pick up the styles I have highlighted. So if I go in here, I'll just make this my headline. And then all this text will be my body text. And whoops. Headlines. All right. So now I've created styles. Whenever I create a paragraph style, paragraphs operate on blocks of text. So basically it's anything between a hard return in your text. So if I so basically all I really need to do is have my cursor sitting in the middle of this headline. If I click body text, that's weird. Oh, I know why. I think. Hold on. Nothing. I did not have the headline style applied to that entire line of text. Now, if I got my cursor in here and I click body text, that'll change the entire block to whatever that type style was. And I can still go back in and edit these as well. So if I come over here to my paragraph styles panel and I double click on it, oh, there it is. It'll open a dialog box. This has all of my, these are the basic character formats I had set. I mean, all these different options that I can change down through here. So if I, indents and spacing, for instance, if I want a little bit of space between my headline and my body text, I can go into my indents and spacing, do space after, and increase that. With the preview on, we can see that I'm adding space between each of those lines. So maybe 7's too much. We'll go 5. Say OK. Now anytime I apply, so let's say that I want to return this line of text, and then I want to return it here. So now if I put my cursor in there and select headline, I apply my headline to that text as well. I don't like the space in the leading. I'll go back into my headline and tighten up my leading. Too much. And I could add a little space before maybe. And then some spacing, space before. This was 7. So we could create paragraph styles that way. Good if you've got something that you need to make sure it's consistent all the way through. I really don't spend any time with, aside of showing it to you here, I don't spend any time in Illustrator on style sheets. Do spend an awful lot of time on style sheets though in InDesign, because that's where it really matters when you're doing long form documents. But style sheets are kind of one, especially when we get into InDesign, one of the most powerful tools that the program has. So, but this at least, they work the same way. So this at least kind of gives you a little bit of insight into those. So, any questions about any of that so far? What time is it? It's 3:30. we're going to do a little more. For Tuesday, I think I want to do a in-class exercise of some type and some of this stuff. We're going to create a couple of logo type kinds of things. So, I'll leave this here. 45 minutes is long enough.